Alrighty, test, test, test. Okay. I'm throwing out announcements and then we'll cover what's happening. Okay. Um, Hello, everybody. My voice is a bit of a mess, but I still want to do this. Is it the smartest choice? Meh. Perhaps not, since I'll be throwing this on your team and other people might want it, but whatever. Here we go. Uh, for those only like 3 to 4 more hours. I don't think it's gonna be that long. I think it should be like an hour and a half. But yeah, there's quite a few cards left, so we'll see. But yeah, my voice is still a mess. I've been sick the last few days, and I still feel pretty good, but I sound weird. But anyhow, for people who are not aware, this is part two. Part one, we started ranking a bunch of minors. I will be throwing this on YouTube. All of these minor improvements are new to Board Game Arena. They just got added in a new card set to beta. They are all of the E-Deck cards, which is a cards deck recently releasing in a physical form in across North America. Europe already has it. North America is getting it soon, or does have it. I don't know. It's close. It also consists of a bunch of ABCD cards that haven't been added to BGA previously. Um, they were considered more difficult to program and hadn't previously been implemented, but it comprises of like slightly over 150 cards. We are talking through each card and then loosely giving it a rank. The exact ranking honestly doesn't matter that much. Ranking Agricola cards is a little tricky because some cards really stand out in certain circumstances and situations. And so ranking things that have high variance in a tier is pretty hard. This is also why, like, ultimately you can't really just look at a list of power or a tier list and know how to draft. Sometimes your cards you've already drafted in your hand are going to tell you that you really should take a certain card that's going to pop off. But for people that are first learning a card set, I understand how useful these things are in terms of trying to identify what are stronger cards that are worth building your games around and trying to exploit. If you try to build your game and try to exploit loppers, for example, you're going to have a relatively bad time. But if you try to build your game around ash trees, you're going to have a pretty good time. So, tier lists still have some value for sure. So, um, loosely what the tiers here do mean. S tier means that they're very strong. They should almost always be picked if you're able to. Many of these in this tier are going to be banned or are already banned or might get banned. The A tier is full of cards that are just very generically strong. You're almost always happy to have them. They have good effects. The B tier is just a bit worse than that. These are cards that are often fairly playable, decently flexible, potentially have higher upside. Uh, the C tier is just kind of average. These cards are okay. Um, Rarely do they do anything outstanding, but a lot of them have small boons or effects or have certain niches they can live in. D tier cards are generally kind of bad. They might have some niches where they're sometimes playable, but on average, they're not really worth it. These are the type of cards that you're going to be last picking. They might fall out of the draft. F tier cards are cards that basically should fall out of the draft. They're very bad. They're almost never playable. Some of them are like truly unplayable. Some of them would just have really small niches. So yeah, loosely you can think of like S tier as your first picks. A tier is like your first or second pick cards. B tier are like your second, third pick cards. C tier is like third, fourth, fifth pick cards, something like that. D tier is what you're picking at the end of the draft, and F tier is what's falling out of the draft. All right, catching up on chat. Oh, hey, welcome, first time chatter. You're a big fan of videos. Thanks, that's cool. You're catching up with the tier list, and then I just came online. You're currently playing, so can't watch much now. That's fine, it'll be here later. Keep doing what you're doing. You're awesome. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate that. Glad that people are finding this useful. That's part of why I want to keep doing it here, even again with my voice being funky. But you just had a game with ash trees. Turns out it combos with Woodfield, which is insane good. If you knew that, you might have triggered it way earlier. Yeah. Uh, Ash trees is very good, and indeed, it just requires two planted fields. So, Woodfield does count for ash trees, as do any other funky field type interactions. Like Cherry Orchard should count. This card's a field. Once you plant stuff in it, it's a planted field, even if what you've planted is wood. So, uh, but anyhow, I think I got all the kind of background info out of the way for people who, for some reason, are just watching part two in this video series. So we're going to dive back into talking about cards. The last card we talked about was Carp Hammer. And so our next card is Telegram. Telegram requires you to have at least one fence in your supply. You spend 2 food and you get a point. You add 1 to the current round for each fence in your supply, and you mark the corresponding space. In that round, you get to put a person from supply. Placing a person from supply means you get an action. Getting an action is pretty solid. Getting an action at the cost of 2 food is fine. The problem is that action comes much later, usually. It's pretty weird to have a fence in supply, then pay 2 food while playing this card, and then later get an action that you actually want. Also, placing a person from supply is slightly funky because if you already have 5 family members, you can't do it. The free point is fine, but this card is pretty awful. Uh, Partly because it's just so hard to have a situation where it's useful. By the time you fence, you mostly want to fence all your fence pieces. The main use to this is like if you fence 13 or 14, you can then SP with Telegram and maybe get an extra action in like round 13 or 14. But getting an extra action in around 13 or 14 is usually not that valuable because the board is pretty bad by that point in most games, and that action is a lot of times going to be doing almost nothing. So this seems too hard to set up. Correct. It's very niche when you can even play it, and even when you can play it, the benefit is pretty bad. It is at least a point, but 2 food to a point is also not a good exchange. I'm putting Telegram in F tier. I've played with Telegram a few times in real life. I've even drafted it a few times like, oh, this is a Telegram hand. It's going to work this game. We can do it. And no, you still can't. You still can't make it work, and indeed, the benefit is pretty weak. Uh, so, it's bad. Grassland Harrow. Here's another card with like too many words, but uh, you need 2 occupations. You need a resource still after payment. So you have to pay 2 wood, you need a resource in your supply, and you need 2 occupations. Then you add 1 to the current round for each building resource still in your supply, and you put a field on that round space. At the start of that round, you can plow a field for free. This is similar to Hand Plow. Hand Plow is a card where you spend 1 wood and you put a field 5 rounds in the future, and it has no prereqs. And Hand Plow is okay. Maybe even slightly above average. Hand Plow's maybe B tier. This thing costs an extra wood, it has harder prereqs, and it's funky with its resource timing. So this is another pretty bad card. 2 wood for a plow is not that good. 2 wood for a delayed plow is not that good. And then you need 2 occupations and you need your resource count to line up where it actually is okay. This is pretty bad. Anyhow, this is the kind of card that would turn off beginners. Yeah, this is just an annoying design card. Like, it has too many words also. Like, it's just kind of confusing. Um, so, Sorry, I got pretty distracted there. Grassland Hero seems like F tier to you, maybe low D. You think D is generous? Um, with all the ways there to get plows. Yeah, I was basically struggling if this is D or F tier. Yeah, like it still is a field, and it can work sometimes. It's not quite as clunky as I'm making it out to be. You can sometimes like play it while fighting for growth, and you only have a couple resources left after building your room, but it's still pretty freaking narrow. I will throw it in F tier. It's also pretty bad. Yeah, I feel comfortable with that. All right, petting zoo is next. Petting zoo cost of wood, has no prereqs. As long as you have a pasture orthogonally adjacent to your house, you can keep animals of any type on this card up to the number of rooms in your house. This is also not very good, but at least it's cheap and easy to play. The reason this is not particularly good is by the time you already have a pasture on your board, you have some animal capacity. So do you need more animal capacity? Dubious. This has no points on it. It purely is paying a wood to hold animals and taking a minor improvement action. It still has some use and it's relatively cheap. Um, I'll put it in D tier, but this is not a particularly good card because again, by the time you build a pasture next to your house, you probably don't need more capacity. Also, building a pasture next to your house is a little awkward in how you keep plowing and how you keep building your house, if that's a thing you want to do. I think Petting Zoo just barely avoids F tier, though. Um, mostly because, yeah, it does actually have some. It has some realistic uses um, that aren't actually that bad. So, feels like it combos with mini pasture. Correct. It does come with mini pasture pretty well. Um, mini pasture is a type of example of like why you would fence early next to your house and feel like you don't have enough capacity. Um, but yeah, you could have just built more fences. F tier for you. I think that's fair. Um, it's real close to me if that's a D or F tier, but maybe I'm being generous because I just dealt with previous F tier cards. Anyhow, let's start talking about real cards again. Nail Basket is next. It costs a read, gives a point. A read to a point is already not terrible. It's not great, but like it's an okay card. And then it actually has a decent effect. Each time you use a wood accumulation space, you can place a stone from your supply and get a build fences action. Getting it build fences action while taking wood is pretty good. Paying a stone for that is a little iffy, but Nail Basket can create some really nice combos. Obviously, anything that wants build fences actions, like Hedgekeeper, combos with this bad boy. Um, Also, in practice, you can often like leave a stone on like the one wood or two wood space, and then get yourself back on that space in a future round. So you're not really always constantly spending the stone because you leave it there. So if you're the next person to go there, you can get that stone back, replace it to get a fence action again. Um, so overall, Nail Basket is decent. It's not great, but it does have some combos. It definitely has some uses. A read to a point is decent. I'm gonna put that in C tier. It is a card that sometimes has pops off and will have more value, but it often at least has some value. It's a decent card that has some nice upside in certain games. So it can save fence block. Yeah, it can save fence block too, which is nice. All right, Carpenter's Bench. Carpenter's Bench is wild. More good Carpenter's things. Any reason the text for the next visitor is needed? No. We talked about this in the last video, but pretty much all the parentheticals that get added to these cards don't seem very useful to me. In this case, I mildly accept that it's a little confusing what that stone is doing, so like fine. This parenthetical is actually okayish. A lot of the cards that just are like you're exchanging a grain for a vegetable. It's like, duh, I'm paying a grain and getting a veggie. You don't have to tell me that. So most parentheticals on cards I ignore because yeah, they're dumb, but the publishers love to do it. So you're convinced that Agricola has disdain for its players. You were between high C and low B for that card. The tempo on it's really great. Yeah, the tempo on Nail Basket is pretty nice for your fences too. Like it's possible Nail Basket should be B tier. I'm definitely open to the idea it should be B tier, but like paying a reed is a meaningful cost, and then paying a stone to get your fence action, like there's some meaningful payments involved with it too. So anyhow, here's a thing that doesn't have meaningful payments involved. Carpenter's Bench. No prereqs, cost of wood. Each time after you use a wood accumulation space, you can use the wood that you took to build a pasture. If you do, one of the fences is free. This card is nuts. This card is really good. This card is going straight to S tier. This card maybe is ban worthy. This allows you to pretty much fence 15 by just taking wood. Like, you take 3 wood and use it to fence a 4 space pasture. You then later take like 2 wood and you fence another box on top of it with using 3 fences. You take 3 wood again in the future, and now you fence another box, adding on 4 more fences. And then you take 3 wood again, adding on another box. So Carpenter's Bench gives you all of your fence actions that you need while taking wood, and it saves you 4 fences. It just gives you incredible tempo on fences. The fact that this only costs a wood and has no prereqs means you can play it super easy. It's very good. It's very powerful. It's possibly ban worthy. I'm not totally sure it's powerful enough to be ban worthy, but it is good. It's very good. It counts as a fence action. It does not. It does not count as a fence action. But it is funny to compare to basket, because exactly, instead of paying a stone for nail basket, you get plus wood with your fence action on Carpenter's Bench. So it is funny that they're right next to each other. This is like a hedgekeeper in minor form that also wood polices. Correct. It does not count as a build fences action though, explicitly. So that does, there is slight downside there in Carpenter's Bench in that you don't get combos with fence actions. Also, Carpenter's Bench is a little limited because you can only use the wood that you took to fence with. So you can't add more wood to fence with Carpenter's Bench and stuff. So Carpenter's Bench does have slight limitations. Carpenter's Bench pretty much does have to do what I described, where it's going to fence the full 15 fences over 6 spaces. It can't do the surprised sheep fencing, the like 2 1x1 boxes with the 2x3 box. It really is not going to achieve that because it won't allow you to fence like that. So in really wood tight games, it can be messy slightly. Although again, you still play it early enough that it's often hard for you to get wrecked. But anyhow, yeah, it's very good. Slow free-ish fences is good. Yeah, it's very good. Toolbox. This is has no prereqs. It costs a wood. In the work phase, after each turn in which you build at least 1 room, stable, or fence, you can build the joinery, pottery, or BMW major improvement. Now, to be clear, this is not free. You still have to pay for the improvement. So this is merely giving you opportunities to build these improvements while you build rooms, stables, or fences. If you, for some reason, want to build the joinery, pottery, or basket makers, usually you should just do it rather than paying a wood from Toolbox and then taking another action and then hoping to do it. This card has a couple of okay-ish combos if you really want to spam the guilds, but this is bad. This is like real bad. Spending a minor improvement and paying a wood just so you can later play major improvements, maybe, like, it every once in a while it'll actually be useful and do enough, but mostly this is a trap card to take or build around or use. It's close to F tier. It might just be F tier. Like, it's bad. I'm gonna put it in F tier. It's bad. It's real bad. It's like not as bad as some of the F tier cards because like it will occasionally have games where it does stuff, but it's bad. Furniture as an improvement. Um, yeah, but no, but not actually, not actually that. Um, this is like a crappy blueprint. Correct. It's a much worse blueprint. So sorry, I was getting another message here too, getting distracted. Anyhow, that card's bad. We're moving on. Oxcode. Ooh, I like this image. I haven't seen Oxcode yet. The printed card, I guess. Oxcode requires 3 occupations. It costs a wood but gives a point. And each time after you use the cattle market space, you can pay 2 food to plow a field. This is a weird form of plow help, but this is very good. Um, a wood to a point is pretty solid, but then you also want to take cows and you want to plow fields, and now you get to do both at once. You do have to pay 2 food for the field, which is, a meaningful cost, but this also allows for some pretty awesome like shenanigans on the cattle market space. The main problem with this card, of course, is that like a lot of times there is competition to take cows. Cattle market might not flip until round 11, and if you play this, everybody knows you want to take cows, and if they need to take cows, they're going to super prioritize it. So it can get messy. But a lot of times, even in like a kind of iffy case, this card essentially reads spend a wood and 2 food for a point in a field. A wood and 2 food for a point in a field is really a very good effect. And the fact that it has higher upside than that, this card is very good. It's not S tier good, but it is super in the A tier. Um, Oxcode is very good. Uh, it's very fun. Yeah, again, it might only be 1 plow, but again, yeah, 1 wood and 2 food for a point in a field is a great package. Like, fantastic. The 3 ox is a kind of meaningful restriction, but not really, because by the time that you want to take the cattle market space, you're almost always gonna have 3 ox. Like, if you somehow don't have 3 occupations by the like mid to late game, that's pretty weird. So anyhow, next card, Woodsaw. Has no prereqs, costs of wood. Each time all other players have more people than you, you can take a build rooms action without placing a person. Woodsaw is actually kind of useful for certain game plans. Most of the time, this means everybody else has grown ahead of you, which is a little bit iffy because allowing everybody else to build ahead of you is definitely a slight bummer. However, uh, getting a build rooms action for the cost of a wood while doing it via minor improvement can be pretty useful. Um, there are shenanigans here too, where like if everybody else has grown, you're able to start player Woodsaw in order to build a room, which can save you if for some reason you're getting locked out of the build queue. Like if the growth queue is built around build and somehow somebody else has like messed with you, Woodsaw can super save you in scenarios where everybody else has already grown once, and like the guy that grew first has already built another room and is trying to grow to 4 before you get to grow. Suddenly you can SP Woodsaw, immediately build a room and grow the next round before while avoiding having to build rooms on the build room spot. This is not very common though, to be clear. That's like the best use case scenario for Woodsaw. That's a pretty good use case. But Woodsaw is really just a card that, yeah, is like an option for emergencies. It sometimes happens, it sometimes is useful, but most of the time it does nothing. Most of the time it's not getting played. Uh, it requires pretty specific scenarios where you'd want to use it. So it is going into the D tier, but Yeah, this is actually like an interesting T tier card in that it does have niches and uses where it's actually pretty good. So often useless, occasionally game winning. Correct. That's absolutely where it is. Um, is Oxcode worst in Draft 8? I mean, a little bit, but Oxcode is still really good. Like, Oxcode's still really good. Cookery lesson is next. It costs 2 food. Each time you use a lesson space and a cooking improvement on the same turn, you get a bonus point. Cookery lesson is decent. If you have a hearth and you plan to play some number of occupations and you have some animals set up, you can pretty regularly like eat an animal while playing an oc and get a couple bonus points out of this. Um, it still requires pretty specific circumstances where you want to spend the 2 food and the minor improvement to get like 3-ish bonus points later. But 3-ish bonus points can be quite a lot. And the scenarios where you have a hearth and have animals that you can eat while playing ox is not super uncommon. Um, this is C or D tier. I don't quite know where to put it. It's probably D tier because even when I think I'm gonna have a cookery lesson game, the 2 food upfront cost and tempo is pretty annoying. But it definitely can show off sometimes. It's not that bad, but it's probably it always sounds better in my head than it tends to turn out to be. Um, it's rare that I actually am super happy about cookery lessons, so I guess that's a D tier. You think it's C tier at worst? I'm open to that, but it's so rare cookery lesson actually works. That's my main issue. Like when cookery lesson is good for you, yeah, it's like a B or C tier card, but there are definitely games and there's so few games that I actually wind up using cookery lesson. And that could partly be a me thing, but I'll put it in D tier and be happy. All right, animal betting. It requires a grain field, but it's a free point. It costs no resources, and you get a point. You can keep 1 extra animal of the same type in each of your unfenced stables, and 2 extra animals in each pasture with a stable. So this gives you slightly extra animal capacity. That extra animal capacity rarely matters or does anything, but a free point for having a grain field is totally fine. Cards that give free points are reasonably good. Um, the fact that it basically does nothing else and that you need a grain field before playing it and that it gives you capacity is weird and awkward. Again, that's part of why I think it's not that good. Like, most of the time when you have grain fields, it means that you don't have capacity problems. Uh, so I think it's getting just C tier here. Free point is good, but free point that does like nothing else is not that useful. Maybe B tier. This is slightly weird to me in that I've had a break of a few days, so I have to remind myself where I've been putting other stuff. I gave Rod Collection B tier basically because it was a free point. Alright, fine. Uh, yeah, fine. I'll put it B tier, but you think I'm being harsher on cards today because I've been sick? That could be. That could be. Um, all right, walking boots. Walking boots. You can't have more than 4 people, but it's a free card and you immediately get 2 food. You also immediately place a person from your supply. If you do, in the next returning home phase, you remove that person from play, meaning you're capping yourself to 4 actions forever. You can never grow to 5. However, you immediately get 2 food and an immediate action. The immediate action can also be pretty nasty. Um, it's possible that this card winds up getting banned just because of the annoyance factor of getting to immediately place a person. Immediately placing a person gets pretty messy. Like, what if Scholar plays Walking Boots? Um, I don't actually know how that works. I don't know how that's allowed. Like, it the creation of cards like this is kind of problematic from a rules standpoint. In the generic sense of you just get an extra action plus 2 food, that's pretty useful tempo. Even if you can never grow to 5 in the future. Um, and the fact that it says no other prereqs and stuff, like, you have to be comfortable with never getting those max family points, which can be a meaningful downside, but this is definitely fairly solid. Um, I think I'm calling it B tier, but it's awkward. Like, I don't fully know how to feel about it. We do colloquially call this murder boots, because it does feel like you're basically sending a family member out to die. Uh, but yeah, I think I'll put it B tier. Like, 2 food and an action is like, yeah, I can't get 3 points later in the game, but that can be really helpful tempo. So, all right. Future building site is next. Future building site has to be played in round 4 or before. It does give 3 points. However, until all other farmyard spaces are used, you cannot use the unused spaces that are next to your house. This is pretty awkward. Not being able to use the spaces next to your house is a pretty big downside. It makes it really awkward to build a room, for example. Um, does that include rooms? Correct. The major problem with this card is that it prevents you from building a room. Now, the main way to actually use this card is that you build a room and then you play this card in round 4, in which case you do get 3 points, but you still give yourself headaches about building more rooms or how you do the rest of your farm layout. So yeah, this card is straight to F tier. This is a huge trap. People are going to see 3 points and want to go for it, but the other problem is all these cards that give you a bunch of points but have to be played in stage 1. Stage 1 actions are basically worth like 3 to 4 points. Like, setting up your game is super important. If you give me more actions in stage 1, I will take a trade of like -3 points for another action. Like, just giving me fields that I can use, like, is essentially 3 points, but will multiply crops, help my feeding, etc. Like, I don't like I don't like cards that just give me points and are forced to play in stage 1. I don't think they're good deals. I don't think they're good trades, even when the points look pretty exciting. Future Building Site is a card that will trap tons of players. They will try to use it, and they will lose the game because of it. It's not worth it. Feels like a curse card an opponent wants to play on your farm. Correct. That is absolutely what that is. Hand card is next. Hand card cost a wood. Before each work phase, so before the start of a round, you can take a building resource from a wood, clay, reed, or stone stack that contains at least 6, 5, 4, or 4. Handcart is okayish. Mostly it gets you a couple of clay. Uh, it's not that wild for clay to stack up to 6 or 5, and for handcart to allow you to steal one. It's also not wild for wood to get to 6, and for handcart to get you a wood or 2. It's pretty rare for stone to get to 4 or reed to get to 4, but it occasionally happens. Yeah, victory tier. No, no. I agree. I think handcart's gonna go C tier. You spend a wood, but you often get like maybe 2 wood and 2 or 3 clay and maybe a reed or a stone. Some games it'll be even more crap than that. Uh, but like that can be solid. It also will mess your opponents. That's the annoying factor of it. Like, your opponents are gonna forget about it, and they're gonna try to like SP for 6 wood, and then you're gonna steal one of the wood before the round or some garbage. But it's fine. Uh, You're kidding, you don't like this card? It's actually decent. Annoying tier card, yes, it's very annoying. Tree guard counter, slightly, that's true too, actually. Any tree guard game, hand card will absolutely go off because it'll just steal a wood every time. That actually is a good point too. Hayloft Barn is next. Hayloft Barn costs 3 wood. It requires an occupation. You put 4 food on this card. Each time you obtain at least 1 grain, you also get a food from this card. Once the food on this card is empty, you get a family growth even without room action. Getting a free family growth without room action that doesn't require an action is insane value. The fact that this also gives you food is insane value. Now, how do you get the grain off the card? Well, every time you obtain at least 1 grain. So obtain includes the harvest. When you pull grain off your fields, that counts as a instance of obtain. So a lot of times, like, you play an Ock, you take some wood, you play Hayloft Barn, you take some plows, you manually take some grain, you sow some grain, you get some grain. Like, it's pretty easy to just find ways to get the grain, and then you just get a family growth action. This thing's insanely busted. This is already banned. It will forever be banned. It goes straight to S tier. It's dumb. Don't play with it. This is the type of card that tells you that Uwe doesn't actually know what he's doing when he designs cards. At least for competitive play. Maybe for casual play, this is fun and interesting, but this is busted. This looks nasty with all the grain stuff. Yeah, this is just absurd. This card is absurd. When you first saw it, you couldn't believe what you were reading. Correct. It's banned even if it didn't give a grow action. Like just that it allowed you to family growth even without room. Probably. It's probably still ban worthy even if it didn't just literally give you the action. Even like if it just like counted as a room once it was cleared. It's probably still ban worthy, but it at least would be closer to balanced. If it just counted as a room. But actually, I kind of like it if it just granted a room. I don't know that it would be ban worthy. Maybe. It's actually kind of interesting at that point. Anyhow, it's banned. We don't have to worry about it. Guest room is next. Guest room is also very good. Guest room costs 4 wood and a reed, but you immediately place any amount of food from your supply on this card. And then once per round, you can discard a food from this card to put a person from your supply. So, this is essentially a way to family growth without doing the normal room stuff or fighting for the growth space. Your ideal way that you use this is like you just stockpile a bunch of food in stage 1, and then you also gather a reed and some wood, and then you play guest room in round 5. You put 10 food on the card, and now you have an action for every round. The other kind of problematic thing about guest room is that once per round clause can be triggered the round that you play it. So if you play guest room in round 5 and you put 10 food on the card, you also immediately get to discard a food to put a person that round. It's very possible this card is going to get banned. In original edition, this card was not banned. It was just one of the most powerful cards. However, there's 2 kind of key differences. In original edition, you could not take an action the round you played it. You had to wait till the next round to take an action. That was meaningful. Also, original edition food's a bit tighter, whereas revised food is more free. So it's even easier to get the extra food early to make guest room pop off. Further things we should say about guest room. Because you're placing people from the supply, the other advantage to guest room is that you don't have to pay for those family members in the harvests. Guest room is also pretty nasty because it's placing a person from your supply. So it still allows you to build a room and grow normally and still be guest rooming. The only way that your guest rooming has to eventually stop is if you grow to 5 family members, you no longer have a person in your supply that you can place. So that is a thing. Guest room is also pretty flexible, more so than what I was saying. You don't have to put a food for every remaining round. You can just guest room for like 7 food, even if there's like 9 rounds left. And you just pick which rounds you don't want to use the effect in, or you just plan that you're not going to use the effects in like round 13 and 14. And that's fine because, again, by the time you get to round 13 or 14, maybe you have 5 family members anyhow, or even if you don't, those extra actions don't usually matter a ton in those late rounds. Guest room is wildly powerful. Wait, was this in EIK? No, it's not an. When I say original edition, I mean Play Agricola original edition. This is a G4 G5 card. All of EDEC is G4 G5. These have been played thousands of times on Play Agricola. I and other have a lot of experience with them in that format. There's a lot of useful statistics in that format. Guest Room was not banned over on Play Agricola. It's still not banned. It's a very powerful card. It's one of the premier minor improvements in the set, but it's not banned. However, again, the differences I said for revised, I think unfortunately Guest Room might have to get banned, which I will be a bit sad about because I think Guest Room's really interesting and allows for some really interesting play. But anyhow, you think this is better for your 4th family member? Uh, I think you're wrong, but that's fine. It's a flexible lover, and who wouldn't want one of those? Correct. The fact that this essentially allows you to grow in round 4, so yeah, this is pretty nuts. Guest room is pretty nuts in what it allows. It can be absolutely. Guest room is absolutely devastating in like late grow games where nobody else has a way to grow, and you get to play guest room in. You get to play guest room down in round. You play guest room in round 5, and nobody else is growing until round 7. It's just crazy. But anyhow, I think that's enough words on guest room. Although guest room is, yes, just very. There's a lot we could say about it, but ambition is next. It requires 2 ox. Each time you get a minor improvement action on an action space, you can instead build a major improvement instead of a minor. This is solid. You're giving up a minor improvement action, and then you're giving up another later minor improvement action just so you can build majors. But it's free, and that can be an okay change. This is only particularly good if you have a lot of minor improvement actions. But if you have any cards that help give you minor improvement actions, ambition can be a nice way to upgrade those into major actions. With that said, it's still D tier. It it doesn't do much, but occasionally it'll have games where it's useful. It only says from a space though, not cards. Yeah, I still mean like you can play ambition with a minor improvement helper. You can play your other minors with your minor improvement helper. Then yes, you build majors while you're taking the actual like action spaces that give you minors. I'm just saying in general, ambition is not very good because you usually want to play your minor improvements. The main way ambition gets to be good is if you have help on playing your minor improvements, like Equipper, and you want stuff to actually be doing while you take minor improvement actions later. That's what I was getting at. All right, final scenario. Final scenario, you have to play on round 13 or before. You reveal the action space card on round 14, and only you can use it until round 14 starts. So, final scenario just gives you a cheaty way to use red offenses, but being able to use red offenses whenever you want as like a last action throughout rounds 11, 12, 13 is pretty freaking good. Red offenses is pretty efficient. The main reason red offenses actually sort of secretly sucks is that if you wait that long to get your fences down, you also have crappy animal points. And that's sacrificing a lot of farmyard points usually. But if you can use red offenses as your like last action of round 10 or whatever, that's pretty freaking good. So final scenario being totally free and having no meaningful prereqs, like this is pretty good. I don't quite know if it goes into B tier because you don't always want a red offense. It's probably B tier. Like having the ability to just red offense whenever you want is pretty good. You think it's C? That's reasonable. Does that kill somebody's Pioneer? I'm not totally sure, Mike. The truth is that Final Scenario doesn't actually read this way in real life. Final Scenario in real life tells you to put the card in front of yourself. So it shouldn't mess with Pioneer. It shouldn't mess with any of those cards. Um, but the way this now reads, I don't know. They they updated this text purely for BGA reasons because programming the card to go in front of somebody is weird and wild. So I understand why they updated it to this for like online wording, but it does lead to new rules questions. Anyhow, Grain Depot is next. Grain Depot, you can pay wood, clay, or stone. It costs 2. It has no other prereqs. You get to put a grain on the next 2, 3, or 4 round spaces. This is usually pay 2 grain, or pay 2 clay for 3 grain on the next 3 rounds. Now that's pretty strong. Occasionally, you'll have extra stone, and paying 2 stone for 4 grain on the next couple rounds is pretty good. Paying 2 wood for 2 grain on the next 2 rounds is fine. It's not particularly strong, but it's still totally fine. This card is very good. This Grain Depot is A tier. The fact that it has flexible payments and that it just gives you a bunch of grain quite quickly is very powerful. You can play it really whenever you want. If you want a bunch of early grain, you can get it down early. If you want the grain just late in the game to sow with, you can play it then. If you need it in the mid game for some food help and some whatever, you can play it then. It has no other prereqs. It's relatively affordable. It's very good. Kettle. Kettle requires a grain field. It costs a clay. And then it gives you some exchange options. It allows you to exchange 1, 3, or 5 grain for 3, 4, or 5 food and 0, 1, 2 points, but it is any time. So, I think people read Kettle and they see the whole 5 grain for 5 food and 2 bonus points and assume that this follows the pattern of like beer table, beer keg stuff in that it's a bonus point generator. Kettle is not a bonus point generator. 5 grain for 5 food and 2 bonus points is not, like, almost never is actually a good exchange. Like, to have that much grain is pretty much unthinkable. However, Kettle is actually pretty dang strong. And the reason is because you can churn 1 grain in for 3 food at any time and as many times as you want. Turning grain in for 3 food without having to spend actions and doing it as much as you want, that is pretty dang powerful. Kettle is a 1 card answer for your feeding. Yeah, it's any time. That's the key thing to read here. So Kettle will let you turn 3 grain into 9 food if you want. Like, you can just turn every single grain that you want at any time into 3 food. That's a very strong effect, actually, for a very affordable minor improvement. If you have grain and you want it to be your feeding source, Kettle can totally be the answer to how you feed. You can harvest the grain and then convert the grain in the kettle during the harvest. Like, Kettle absolutely will unlock some players' feeding. I don't know that it's quite A tier just because you don't always have grain game plans, and so you don't always need Kettle. But for game plans that have grain and are going to have grain fields, Kettle is clearly A tier. But I'm going to put it in B tier just because of the frequency of how often I think you actually want to draft Kettle. But even slightly speculative Kettles are totally reasonable, though. Like, this can just be a way that you find out is your feeding plan. So it still really wants grain help? Correct. There is a lot of grain help in the draft. But occasionally it like doesn't work. So like I'm still a little hesitant to like just pick. I think I'm generally hesitant to pick Kettle over these other A tier cards if I don't already have the grain help. If I already have the grain help, absolutely pick Kettle and be happy with it. But if I'm just like speculatively picking Kettle, I'm probably taking basically everything in A tier before I take a speculative Kettle hoping to find grain, which is why I'm putting it in B tier. But all right, skimmer plow is next. It requires 2 ox. It costs a wood. Each time you use the farmland or cultivation space, you can plow 2 fields instead of 1. Each time you sow, you have to put 1 fewer good on each field that you're sowing. So this is plow help. It allows you to plow 2 instead of 1 every time you plow. However, it also totally kills your ability to multiply your crops. That sow clause is really punitive. It's a very big downside to the point where this card is actually not very good. This is not actually like every once in a while this is okay because you just want the help for plows and you don't care that you can't plant crops. But mostly skimmer plow is a trap. It helps you get fields, but then you can't actually plant in those fields, which is pretty bad. I'm putting this in D tier. Yeah, it gives fields, but it doesn't even give fields that well. It's pretty. Nah, it's. I'm putting it in D tier. It's bad. You've seen people sow veg. Yeah, I mean they will. I guess it's bad. It's bad. Apiary, on the other hand, is good. Apiary requires 4 ox, but otherwise it costs nothing. And at the end of each work phase, you can sow exactly 1 crop on 1 field. Apiary is really good. Uh, Getting a bunch of free sow actions, and it's not a full sow action, but even just sowing 1 crop in a field every round is really good. Um, you can absolutely build very powerful games around Apiary. The 4 ox is a pretty strict cost, but it's not that hard to have 4 occupations down by like round 9 or 10. And then you play Apiary and you're just getting 5 sown fields throughout the game. And you get to sow them at the end of each round, which allows you to often like, you can often like plow and then take the crops. And then at the end of the round, you instantly get to sow the crop you just took or something. Like, Apiary is very good. It's not actually going to be banned, I don't think. Like, I don't think it's that powerful. The Play Agricola stats suggest that it's not that powerful, but it does suggest it's a premier minor improvement. So I'm setting it straight to S tier. It's very good. I find Apiary very fun to build games around. It's a really interesting card. It's fun to have a very powerful effect. Also, some of the occupations you play to enable Apiary hopefully are helping you with like fields and crops, and then you have some really nice synergy with your Apiary. So yeah, Apiary is very good. Wood Workshop is next. Wood Workshop requires an occupation. It costs a clay, and each time before you play or build an improvement, you just get a wood. This is a lot of wood. Getting a wood before you build or play every improvement is quite powerful. Like, very good. It can give you the wood you need to actually play the improvement. Um, you do have to play this kind of early, obviously, before you start playing a bunch of your other cards, but if you later build, like, 6, 7, 8 improvements, this is just a clay that gives you 6, 7, 8 wood throughout the game for very easy costs. The clay is actually slightly annoying, admittedly, but this card's still really good. The real debate is if Wood Workshop is actually S tier or A tier, and I don't quite know. There are games where you don't have an early clay and you don't want to play this card before a bunch of your other miners, but like, gosh, it's very good. I'll put it S tier, but it's very good. You think it's S tier, also high? Yeah, hello. Uh, Glad you could show up. we're talking through cards. I might have underestimated how many cards I have left. No, I can. Okay, I can get through these cards the next hour-ish, right? Right? All right. Pottery Yard is next. Uh, Pottery Yard requires a pottery or an upgrade thereof. It gives a free point. During scoring, if there are two orthogonally adjacent unused spaces, you get 2 bonus points. So you still take the negatives, but then you get bonus points. So this like kind of covers for unused spaces. You do have to have a pottery, but if you have a pottery and you plan this can just be like a 3-point minor, which is pretty strong. Pottery Yard is pretty good. Requiring a pottery is a little awkward, and requiring some unused spaces is slightly awkward. Layout sometimes, but the effect of 3 points essentially. Although I guess those points are like slightly false because you could just use those spaces. So like, it's not quite a straight 2 bonus points. I'll go C tier. I've had some pretty good Pottery Yard games, but it's not incredible. Which is the first card I have in S tier? I think the first card is Ash Trees. Yeah, it's Ash Trees. All right, Sundial is next. Sundial is a card I think is really fun. Sundial cost of wood. At the end of the work phases in rounds 7 and 9, you get a sow action without placing a person. I like Sundial design-wise a lot. It's not like super strong, but it can be pretty powerful for certain game plans. This is like, for example, a really natural combo with something like Childless, where it gave you a bunch of crops, but then I get to like start player Sundial in round 7 for my growth in round 8. Hope that I've been plowing some fields, and now I just get to plant my crops in round 7, and I can keep plowing some fields and plant more crops in round 9. Like, this can super enable some crop-based strats in giving you your sow action while taking growth or start player for growth, which can really accelerate your game rather than having to actually take the sow action normally. And it gives you 2 sow actions. It gives you sow in 7 and 9. So especially like even if it only allows you to like sow 1 crop in round 7, you can hopefully set up some fields and be able to re-sow some more crops in round 9. And now in stage 4, you can hopefully use some of those crops for your feeding and stuff. So Sundial's pretty powerful in certain games, but it's also it's a fun design. It's by no means busted. It enables some farming game plans in really interesting ways. So kudos to whoever did design this card back in the day on Play Agricola, and I'm glad it exists. I'm going to put it in B tier. It's a pretty powerful effect, but it's definitely not for every game. But for the games that want it, it can be very good. It needs the right game plan, which is why maybe it's C. But anyhow. Compared to Apiary, how many of the combo cards need this unconditional sow action? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Apiary does still have some pretty sick combos also, but the fact that it's not an unconditional sow does, limit it a little. But anyhow, Writing Chamber is next. Writing Chamber costs 2 wood. During scoring, you get a number of bonus points equal to the number of negatives you have to a maximum of 7. This can cancel any negatives, including the negatives on Cesspit, the negatives from begging tokens on begging student or on collector. Writing Chamber is totally busted. Yeah, it's an instant ban. The publisher has even admitted it's a ban for competitive play. This thing will always and forever be banned from competitive play. It's absolutely insane. This cancels the negatives from like early cattle. Like, Revised specifically designed a bunch of cards that have negative points to offset their positive effects, and then also added Writing Chamber into the mix, which completely, throws everything out of whack. So, did Writing Chamber not get a picture? Oh, no, there it is. Okay. Writing Chamber is stupidly powerful. It has insane combos, and it's very much banned. Instant ban. All right. Market stall. Market stall costs a stable. To be clear, that is a. Well, what is that? Is that an unbuilt stable? I actually don't know. That's not a built stable, right? That's just an. It requires. I think that requires an unbuilt stable. Yeah. So you're giving away the ability to build a stable. And then in the field phase of each harvest, you can exchange a grain plus a fence piece from your supply for 5 food. This is actually pretty powerful. Giving away a stable's not really a meaningful cost. Giving away your fence pieces is a meaningful cost. However, like, you're pretty happy about fencing like 13 in quite a few game plans. So if you market stall like just twice in the early game to get your food really set up, and then later like actually build ovens or get like a stronger thing set up, market stall's a really efficient way to turn grain into food. Like, you don't have to have an oven, you don't need bake actions, you just get to convert your grain in the field phase. Market stall's pretty good, even though the cost is pretty annoying of giving up fence pieces and giving up a stable that you can never build. Uh, Basically, yeah, it's just offers a lot of food, and cards that offer the ability to make a lot of food can be just very good in the right circumstances. So for some reason, I can't find it. There it is. I think it's still only C tier because it still has pretty niche uses for when you want it, but it's pretty good in some hands. All right, fat stock stretcher. It requires a wood. Each time you turn a sheep or a pig into food using a cooking improvement, you get 1 extra food. This can be quite a bit of extra food. You might eat quite a few sheep, quite a few pigs. Spending 1 wood to get like 4, 5, 6, 7 food, solid. It doesn't help all the time. It does have to be played at a slightly annoying time, but it's a decent amount of food for some games. I'll put it in C tier. It's an average card. It does meaningful things for some games. Huntsman hat. You have to have a cooking improvement. You spend a reed, you get a point, and for each new pig that you get from an action space, you also get a food. This is mostly just when you take pigs, you get food for each pig you take, but a reed to a point and maybe a couple of food is an okay card. It's not great, but it's not that bad. So this is also just going to be C tier. Like, a reed for 2 or 3 food at a point. You do have to have a cooking improvement. You have to have an extra reed. Like, so it's a little annoying. It's a little niche, but all right. Job contract. Job contract's annoying. Job contract requires you have no ox, but then if both day labor and one of the lessons is unoccupied, or not one of the lessons, sorry, and the adjacent lessons. Yeah. Only if Cheapok, I guess. But anyhow, if Cheapok and day labor are unoccupied, you get to take both with 1 family member. This is annoying because it has no other costs. So start player can often choose to start player with this in round 1 and stay start, which is annoying. They'll start player straight into day labor plus Ock. Job contract can combo with day laborer cards, which is annoying. Yeah, it just creates an annoying play pattern. How strong is it? It mostly is particularly strong if you find combos. Otherwise, it can only be so-so, because sometimes the Ock space can be a little contested. Getting 2 food when you Ock is like a pretty powerful effect for a minor improvement, but like again, you can't always get it because now you're slightly limiting yourself on stuff. If somebody else has day labor cards, they might be blocking day labor quickly on you, so you don't block them. But it's still pretty dang good. It's probably almost A tier, but I don't actually know how much it helps you win always, although it does lead to combos. We're also playing Draft 10 at the moment on BGAs, which I think slightly morphs how much you want to play Ox and how much you can find day labor combos. I'm going to put it only B tier, but that's probably because I have slight distaste for this card more than I should. So, whatever. Bunk beds is next. Bunk beds. You need 2 major improvements. You pay a wood. Once you have 4 rooms, your house can hold a 5th person. This is only okay. Having a room is really exciting sounding, but in order to make this work, you need 2 majors and 4 rooms, and then you play this, and then you can take a family growth action. Most of the time, this gets you a family growth action pretty late, which, like, enabling late family growth is still solid, but you also don't always have 2 major improvements and 4 rooms. Some number of the time when you have 4 rooms, you could just build a 5th room instead of building another major improvement. So, as exciting as rooms are, and as much as you'd think, like, ooh, a card that gives me rooms, I think Bunk Beds is only average, and it might even be D tier, just because it's pretty niche how often it's actually useful and good. It's really not a card you should be taking and trying to build around. It's a card that you might find yourself in position to use, and maybe you lean into it slightly, but I would much rather build around a lot of other cards. Summer House. Oh my, I forgot about this guy. So you have to still be in a wood house when you play this. It costs 3 wood and a stone. But during scoring, if you live in a stone house, you get 2 bonus points for each unused space next to your house. This card is actually totally busted and ban-worthy. This card can be an insane number of bonus points. You can build your house in a stupid way to, like, just jut out into the middle of your farmyard and have, like, all of the spaces next to your house just be worth 2 bonus points. Yeah, you're gonna lose some points for having unused spaces, but this allows you to just focus on building a stupid big stone house and, like, slightly fencing in a space, plowing maybe just a couple spaces. Like, it enables crazy amounts of efficiency in what it does. It's turns out this is way too powerful, and it's, like, totally actually busted once people learn the right play pattern for it. Which, again, the right play pattern for it is, like, to just focus on building a stupid house, build up a bunch of offboard points, barely farm. You do have to worry about finding efficient food by barely farming, but Summer House is straight to S tier, and it's already banned, and it will forever be banned. It enables absolute stupid gameplay. So, all right, stable manure. Stable manure requires at most 1 Ock. It's otherwise free. In the field phase of each harvest, you can harvest 1 additional good from a number of fields equal to the number of unfed stables you have. So, if you have some unfed stables and you have crops in your fields during the field phase of harvest, you get to pull a couple extra crops out. Pulling a couple extra crops out is pretty good, and this card is free. But the combo of having unfed stables plus crops in the ground is pretty rare. So getting the upside is pretty bleh. I'm going to call stable manure a D card. But again, if you for some reason know you're going to have unfed stables and have crops in the ground, it's a pretty good card. It's just, I don't think you should be in that scenario particularly often, and you definitely shouldn't purposely be in that scenario just because you have stable manure. It's not that powerful of an effect, so not very useful. Hey Civ, welcome. The voice is still funky, but we're trying to get through these cards. I have roughly an hour to get through the remaining cards here, which seems pretty doable, so we'll hopefully be able to finish up the miners with this video. Studio. Studio costs a clay and a reed. It gives you a point, and in the feeding phase of each harvest, we can use this card to turn a wood or a clay into 2 food or a stone into 3 food. Studio is okay. Like, it's a little bit of extra food. You should purposely be in that scenario for stall holder. Oh, for stall, yeah, whatever. I also don't really believe in stall holder for everybody's notice. I think most of you are wrong when you try to build around stall holder, but anyhow, focusing on studio. Studio is reasonable. It's really an annoying cost up front. Paying a clay and a reed for a point is really not a particularly good deal. Like, it's pretty annoying to have an extra reed and an extra clay. But the little bit of food help is kind of nice. I think it's still probably a D tier card just because the cost is really annoying. A clay and a reed and then slow trickles of food by eating more resources is pretty awkward, but this has some uses. But yeah, I think it's still also D tier. It's not outstanding in any way. So, all right, straw manure. Straw manure requires 2 fields. Before the field phase of each harvest, you can pay a grain from your supply to add a veg to up to 2 veg fields. So, like, do you want to pay a grain to get veggies? Do you have fields such that you have veggies in fields and you have extra grain and then you're going to play this card in order to get those extra veggies? Maybe. But again, this is really freaking niche. It's rarely particularly a trade you want to be making. I'm really just debating if this is another F tier card or if I'm being slightly too harsh. I mean, the prereq is pretty easy and it's pretty easy to play. It's just the effect does almost nothing most of the time. But I guess it occasionally does something and at least it doesn't cost an insane number of resources. Pretty much all the other F tier cards actually cost you in some capacity. Yeah, I don't know. I'm willing to throw in an F tier. Sure. Straw manure so rarely is going to actually do anything for you. I don't know. Useful in niche cases for global bonuses, correct. But it's bottom D tier? Sure, that's fair enough, but whatever. Wait, Telegram is F? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Telegram is not... I think Telegram's really bad. You can try to tell me it's not, but... Studio Boat. Studio Boat requires an Ock. It costs a wood. Each time you use the traveling player's accumulation space, you also get a bonus point. In games with 1 to 3 players, this card is considered traveling players. So, this card will stockpile its own food like traveling players. So, it adds a bunch of food to the game. But it does give you another spot where you can maybe get bonus points. If you have, like, a conjurer or some reason to want traveling players' action spaces, Studio Boat can do some pretty nasty things, but most of the time Studio Boat's not really that good. You pay a wood and like maybe you get a point, but you also add a bunch of food to the game, which may or may not be good. And sometimes it can be good. I don't know. Studio Boat's very weird to me because it really warps the game, and I don't know how to feel about that. It might be C tier though. Like you pay a wood and you probably get 1 or 2 points. And you get more food accumulation, which presumably is an effect you want if you're playing this card. Gosh, I don't feel good about this. I rarely want to play it personally, which is why I want to put it D tier, but there's probably are reasons to play this card. How does it warp the game? It accumulates... Well, maybe I'm wrong. Does it not accumulate its own food? It's not more food accumulation. Oh, in games is 1 to 3 players. Duh. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. There we go. That's what I'm forgetting. Okay. Yeah. It really doesn't warp the game then. But then also it doesn't add another traveling player space. Yeah. No, it's bad. All right. It's bad. I for some reason, I probably last actually played this card when I played a 3-player game, and I have it all mixed up in my head. So anyhow, it's bad, but it's occasionally useful. So whatever. It's not that important. Large pottery is next. Large pottery costs a stone and a clay. You return the pottery, but now you have this improved pottery. This pottery is worth 3 points, and anytime you can convert a clay to 2 food. So you can convert 4 clay to 8 food, or stuff like that. And then during scoring, you also get slightly more bonus points. Large pottery is pretty good if you know you have a ton of clay. The obvious combo with this is like Loam Pit, and now Loam Pit just gives you a shit ton of food. But like building the pottery, then building the large pottery, and then using the large pottery to continually eat a bunch of clay for food means that you need just a just a crazy amount of clay to really be ahead on all that, which is like sometimes fine. Yeah, correct. That's the weird thing. That's a good point too. I don't know. Supply boat's dumb, or whatever, or studio boat. It's also a dumb design. But whatever. I don't know what to say about it because I don't like it. But anyhow, large pottery is reasonable if you're in certain situations where you know you have a bunch of clay and you want to rebuild it. But like you also can get beat to building the pottery. So it's kind of dangerous to like fully build around a large pottery game plan because then you have to prioritize the pottery. I'm not that high on this, but it's fine. Stone house reconstruction. Stone house reconstruction is a stone to a point with no other prerequisites. That's already pretty dang good. And then at any time, you can convert your clay house to a stone without placing a person. That's quite that's quite good. That enables you to use your like late actions in round 14, just picking up reno parts and then still renovating. This sometimes can speed up like Plow Driver or Scholar type games that want to get to a stone house fast. Stone house reconstruction is really, really good. It's just a stone to a point, which is already good, and it sometimes enables even more than that. I'm going straight to A tier with it. It's quite good. Beer stall. Beer stall costs a wood. In the feeding phase of each harvest, for every unfenced stable you have, you can turn a grain for 5 food. Beer stall is actually pretty good. Beer stall is a good enough reason to just build a stable while you build a room, and then later play beer stall and be able to just freely convert a grain to 5 food in each harvest. You might even purposely never fence that stable just so you have this effect. This is essentially a baker, but instead of Ock form, you have to build a stable and play beer stall. But like building a stable plus playing beer stall to get the effect of baker, pretty decent trade. It's a pretty good way to feed if you have a grain source. Um, it's not incredible. It's a little clunky because you do have to build the stable and you do have to play beer stall, and that's also a meaningful amount of wood you're spending. But any card that can help solve your feeding is pretty decent. It's possible beer stall is B tier, but I'll put it in C. It's every empty. Yes, that's actually a good point, which is also why I've been talking about just one. But you can convert an insane amount of grain into food if you build a bunch of stables. But that's quite a bit of investment now, so it's rarer that you're going to be in those circumstances where you have a bunch of stables and a bunch of grain that you want to convert. But again, if you are, this card is really powerful. It is absolutely going to pop off sometimes. Like I don't blame people that want to call this B tier, but I'll claim it C tier just because like you don't always want this, but this can be a pretty powerful card to build around. Work permit. Work permit costs a food. It requires at least one building resource. You add 1 to the current round for every building resource you have, and you get a person from your supply on the space. In that round, you can use the person. This is another one of these cards where we're spending a food and a minor improvement action in order to get a delayed action later. And that action could be pretty far down the line, depending on how many resources we have. Work permit occasionally works, but it's very awkward. The timing is weird. You're giving up a minor improvement action just to get a guest, and you're paying a food in order to get that guest. I don't really like it. I'm also going to throw this into F tier. It probably sometimes will do more than that, but it's pretty bad. So I don't remember. Yeah, it's pretty bad. You were emphasizing empty. Oh, sorry. Yes, the empty part of beer stall is a meaningful downside that you can't use the stables. All right. Tea house. Tea house costs a wood and a stone, but it gives 2 points. A wood and a stone for 2 points is pretty good. It has to be played in round 6 or later. That's fine. You mostly should play this card for 2 points. That's a pretty good payoff. The ability to skip placing your second person to gain 1 food. Giving up some tempo just to give a food is iffy. Occasionally it can be pretty useful to skip your action, let your opponents go first, and then get to commit to what you're doing. That has some utility during like the mid game, during some shenanigans that you can try to set up, and people have to react to your ability to like threaten the build or grow queue. But mostly, I don't like the skip for a food. Mostly, I don't do it. I don't use it. But a wood and a stone to 2 points is pretty nice. So I'm gonna put Tea House in B tier because I think a wood and a stone to 2 points is a pretty good card, and maybe I get a food or two out of it, and some other shenanigans. Regarding Telegram, you don't think you ever get the guest, but 2 food to a point can't be F tier, surely. I disagree. I think it can, but you think it can be fine to RSF into work permit round 1, but bad in most other cases. Even RSF into work permit, I've found is not particularly that exciting. Like, yeah, you get an extra action, but you get the extra action as the last. You're getting like the last action of round 3, which is probably just like 2 wood, which is what you could have probably taken round 1. Like, I don't know. Work permit does so little, even when you can play it. But I could be proven wrong. I could be proven wrong on Telegram too. Maybe I just haven't used either of those cards well enough, but I think they're all pretty bad. Gypsy's Crock. Gypsy's Crock costs 2 clay. It's a point. Each time you use a cooking improvement and you turn 2 goods into food at the same time, you get an extra food. Gypsy's Crock's not particularly good. 2 clay to a point isn't particularly good, and you're not getting that much extra food out of it. I'm gonna put Gypsy's Crock into D tier. I don't think it tends to do enough. It sounds more exciting than it pretty much ever will actually be. Breed Registry. Breed Registry requires no sheep. It has no other prereqs. During scoring, if you gained at most 2 sheep from sources other than breeding, and you've not turned any sheep into food, you get 3 bonus points. So, this is an annoying card design-wise, because it asks to have memory about the rest of the game, and I don't think that should necessarily exist. But 3 bonus points is really good for games that can get away with this. It says that you get 3 bonus points if you don't eat sheep, and if you don't take more than 2 sheep or get more than 2 sheep from whatever sources outside of breeding. But that means that you can like play this card in the late game and then take like 2 sheep in round 13, breed them, end the game with 4 sheep, never eat them, and yeah. Now, if you've turned sheep into food at any point during the game, you can't play this card. And sheep to food is definitely a solid plan for many people. So it's the other reason I don't love this card is that like there's a lot of game plans that can't really take it and use it, but the other game plans are quite happy with the idea of just a late game start player for 3 points. So yeah, I wish this card didn't exist. I don't think it's good design. I don't think it's interesting design. I think it's problematic in many regards. But for a lot of games, it's pretty dang powerful. A late game card that lets you start player for 3 bonus points is really good. So, does this give you points if you never take sheep? Yes, it does. Uh, it does. Breed registry is really good. It's really good. It's just a late game 3 points, like for a decent number of the players at the table, and it's basically unplayable for some other players at the table. So not a particularly fun card to have floating in the draft, in my opinion. But that might partly be from a guy that really kind of likes game plans of setting up and breeding sheep early for point or eating. But anyhow, changeover. At any time, if a field contains exactly one good as a result of a harvest, you can discard that good and immediately take a sow action limited to that field. Uh, Discarding the last good in a field just to get a sow action is really not good. This card is entirely free, which is nice, but discarding a crop, like, you basically never want to discard a veg because why did I sow a veg if I'm discarding a veg? Also, taking sow actions immediately, like, you already harvested. Why do you necessarily want to sow that field? It's not going to, like, in the next harvest, it's finally going to get used again, but, like, you could have just had the original crop. So you're really just switching what crop you're getting from that field this time. Changeover is really, there's, like, almost no uses for it. There's a couple of combo cards out there in existence, maybe, but it's it's real dumb. It's bad. It's not interesting design for a free card. It doesn't have an effect that does anything really. It's so close to being interesting, but it's just not. Baking course. Baking course requires one ock, has no other prereqs. At the end of each round that does not end with a harvest, you can take a bake bread action. The bake bread action that this card gives is a grade to 2 food. The reason baking course is pretty dang good is it gives you bake bread actions without taking actions. It doesn't have to be this card. So baking course is pretty dang good. Getting a bake bread action, getting more bake bread actions is really good for a lot of grain-based strats. The conversion that this card gives itself is bad. You don't want to use it. But you're playing this card because it's free and it's giving you bake actions, and then you use those bake actions with your actually good bake conversions, which can give you a lot of very good food. So baking course is it's B tier, but like it's A tier for baking games. Like baking course really good for games that know they have grain and want an oven. Getting extra bake actions is very good without taking it. Yeah. Crudite. Crudite is totally free. When you play the card, you can immediately buy a veg for 3 food, and at any time you can discard the top veg of a field. You can discard a veg on top of another veg for 4 food. Crudite is kind of wild. If I sow 2 grain in stage 5, I can discard both grain after the stage 6 harvest to sow a grain and a veg. Okay. Fine. You've maybe found a. But I still have to play changeover. Whatever. Changeover is bad, but maybe that's the niche way you can use it. But whatever. We're having issues this morning. you're having issues. I'm having issues. I don't know. If you're talking about me, my voice is pretty iffy still. I'm getting over an illness. I feel pretty good. My voice just sounds bad. Uh, Anyhow, crudité. As I was talking about, crudité is pretty dang good. This can be a sick amount of food. Like, if you have a couple veggies and you get to plant them in fields and then you just toss the top veggies, you're basically turning your sow actions into like 8 or 12 food. And then those veggies just come right back off where you can re-sow them next harvest. Um, it can be really it can totally be your food answer, and it's totally free, and it helps give you the veg right away. Now, a 3 food for a veg is a pretty expensive exchange, but for some games, a start player minus 3 food for a veg is pretty good. It can be a food answer. This is probably not quite A tier, but gosh, it's very good. Um, it can be, again, when a card can be your like food solve for a game, that can be pretty nice. You had 2 windows of my stream open. You were trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. Started clicking on the 50 tabs. I see. I see. I see. Gotcha. All right. Retrading is next. Retrading requires 1 OC. It costs a food. It gives a point. A food to a point isn't terrible. So much as Civ was giving me crap for rating Telegram F tier, maybe 2 food to a point isn't terrible. A food to a point is even better. At the end of each turn in which you renovate, you can exchange your joinery for the pottery or the pottery for the BMW. So the rest of these words are pretty bad. Like, if you've built the joinery, you probably wanted the joinery, or the pottery was already gone. If you built the pottery, you probably wanted the pottery, not the BMW. So the actual words on this is nonsense. But a food to a point is okay. A food to a point's honestly not that good. You'd rather be doing other things with your minor improvements, but it could be worse. I think I'm still gonna go only D tier. Like, if your only thing that your card does for me is that I'm spending a food for a point, I'm not that happy about it. But maybe C tier. But anyhow, is there a link to the thing where you can interactively look at it while it's being set? I don't think so. Is there a link to the imager list so you can see the ordering? Sure. You can have a link. You can have a link to this. I don't know about the tier list stuff. I honestly don't like Tier Maker site very much. Maybe there were things, but you'll eventually get there'll eventually be a link, I think, to this tier list. But you really can't read these cards on Tier Maker anyhow. Tier Maker doesn't let you like zoom in on cards, to my knowledge. So like, it's pretty. Yeah, I don't really like Tier Maker, to be honest, but it works for some things. Anyhow, Canvas Sack. Canvas Sack requires no occupations. It is worth a point. You have to pay a grain or a reed. When you play this card, if you paid a grain, you get a veg. That's not particularly useful because the whole no oc thing, how do you have an early grain with no occupations down that you want to change into a veg? You probably don't. But the Canvas Sack, pay a reed and get 4 wood. Now, this is pretty good. I also don't love this card because this card really incentivizes start player to just go reedstone food, start player for the 4 wood option, play their game from that point. But Almsbag maybe wants to use this, sure. But anyhow, Canvas Sack, paying a reed for 4 wood and a point. Paying a reed for 4 wood and a point is a very good conversion. The no oc part is the kind of annoying thing, but somebody probably is using Canvas Sack in stage 1 when it's in the draft. It's pretty freaking good. Is it A tier good? I don't quite know because it is a little awkward to pay a reed. You need to get the reed back. You do have to start player with it. You have to have no ox down. I'll give it B tier, but it's pretty freaking good. All right, firewood. Firewood costs 2 food. In the returning home phase of each round, you put a wood on this card, and each time after you build a fireplace, hearth, or oven, you get to move up to 4 wood from this card to your supply. So firewood is your own private like wood accumulation that you can access in 4 wood increments anytime that you build a fireplace, a hearth, or an oven. That's pretty good. With that said, I think people are too high on this at the moment. It does cost an early 2 food, which puts it kind of. I link this sort of, to Private Forest in my head. People are not that excited about Private Forest. It's fine, it's a fine card, but the early 2 food is annoying, and Private Forest just gives you the wood. This card requires you to occasionally do slightly weird timing on when you get your fireplace or hearth or oven. You don't. This card does sometimes give you more wood, and sometimes gives you more wood faster, which is why it's better. But I'm trying to link it to Private Forest as a way to make it clear to people that they maybe should push the brakes. I think there are a few people that think Firewood is basically like an S tier card. They think it's like crazy powerful. I think Firewood is. It's good. I'm not even sure I want to put it very good. I'm close to putting Firewood in B tier, and I could be wrong. The only reason that I feel wrong is because so many experts have been pushing it. Like, some streams lately seem to have been pushing it as a better card than that. And I am less sold because a lot of times my game doesn't want multiple fireplaces or hearths. Now, the dream is, of course, that you build a fireplace and you upgrade it to a hearth at the right timing for Firewood to trigger again. But that doesn't always happen. Private Forest also requires an Ock? Sure. Does it still not work with Earth Oven or yet? No, it does work with some of the minors. I will grant that. It's not just majors. So sometimes you do get cards that combo with it, which is helpful. But you would put it a little higher than Private Forest, but not enough to move it to the next tier. See, yeah, I'm gonna put Firewood in B tier, and I suspect it's gonna be a little contentious because there are some people that have been acting like Firewood is incredible, and I think it's actually not that good. It's good. I want to be clear. It is a good card. Like, you can, some games, you're going to get 12 wood out of this, and it's going to line up, and it's going to be beautiful. But I think a lot of games, you're getting 8 wood from the card, and it's slightly clunky in order to get it. In which case, like, yeah, that's good, but also too early food and a start player action is a pretty meaningful cost in order to get that wood. It's not really a trade that you're necessarily massively ahead on. So, anyhow, Artisan District. Artisan District is a stone to a point as long as you have 3 occupations. That's okay on its own. The scary part about Artisan District is it can be worth a wild number of bonus points if you build a bunch of major improvements from the bottom of the supply board. I don't like designs like this. I think offering huge payouts for niche circumstances is really dangerous. It creates super high variance that's not very interesting. With that said, building like 4 or 5 major improvements for the bottom of the supply board is pretty hard. Like, are you really building all the guilds and both ovens? Probably not. But any card that can offer that many bonus points is scary. I personally don't like this card and wish it was banned for variance reasons, but it probably power-wise is not worth banning. Power-wise, it's probably not even that good. Most of the time, that's a stone to a point. Occasionally, it's a stone to a point plus 2 bonus points. In which case, realistically, it's probably just like a B tier thing. It might not even fully be B tier. It might be like C tier. In that, like, you need 3 ox and then you get to turn a stone into a point. But you think you can sometimes get 3 points for both ovens and a joinery? Yeah, I think sometimes you can build all the guilds. I think some games you can maybe go like 2 guilds and a stone oven when others don't care about the majors very much, and then you still get a pretty good payoff of a stone for 3 points in the end game. Like, I'm still comfortable putting it in B tier. I think it will have some. I think it will have some good games. But yeah, I wish it didn't exist. But Drill Harrow. Each time before you take an unconditional sow action, you can pay 3 food to plow a field. Drill Harrow is actually reasonably good. Paying 3 food for a field is like not terrible. And so getting to plow fields on the sow space, you essentially turn the sow space into plow sow just at the cost of 3 food. But turning the sow space into a plow sow at the cost of 3 food is like kind of a decent effect. It only really works if you have great food, but this is another one of those cards that really pops off in revised if you have a very strong feeding engine. Um, I'm gonna put it in B tier, but like it's gonna have some A tier games. Um, it's great timing. Yeah, you get the field exactly when you want it. Um, Even better than that, on So Bake, you can even bake the grain that you already have, and then pay the food for Drill Harrow, and then sow more grain into the new field you just got. Like, yeah, Drill Harrow good. Drill Harrow's fun too. I do like this card. Linchette. Linchette is free. In the field phase of each harvest, you get a food for each harvested field that is orthogonally adjacent to your house. I've been yelling at Uwe for some bad designs. I gotta give him credit for these D-deck cards. These are actually reasonable D-deck cards. This is a completely free miner that, if you're willing to do some slight shenanigans with the layout of your house and the way you're sowing your fields, you can get a couple of free food. That's fine. It's a totally fine card. It's not a card you want to super build around. It's not a card you want to draft super highly, but towards the middle, towards the end of the draft, this is a C tier card. Like, if I can get a minor improvement that just gives me 4, 5, 6, 7 late game food, why not? It's not that hard to play your house that makes this work. You got like 10 off of it, correct? It can be even better. Like, you can make this quite a bit without without it being that awkward. So it's pretty fun. Earth Oven. Earth Oven is a bit weird. You return a fireplace, and it has 3 printed points on it. So this is basically 2 free points if you upgrade a fireplace. Your fireplace is now like a half hearth. Your boar and veg conversion are improved from your fireplace, but your grain and your cow conversion are not improved. This is pretty good. This is like, why does this exist? Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Also, why is it an oven when it doesn't really give a bake action or actually help bake? But, you know, we can have dumb names, I guess, for cards. Anyhow, like, 2 points and half of a free hearth upgrade for a minor improvement that just requires you to have a fireplace is pretty good. I'm going to put Earth Oven into A tier. Like, a minor improvement that just gives me 2 points and slightly improved feeding is pretty freaking good. Now, do I always build a fireplace? But if I draft Earth Oven, I'm probably building a fireplace. There's usually not that much competition for, like, the 3 clay fireplace, and, like, 3 clay fireplace into Earth Oven is fine sequence. It's not super thrilling, but pretty good. Alright, my voice is going, but we're so close, so we're gonna wrap this up. Oh yeah, we're so close. We're finishing. Alright, Pulverizer Plow. Pulverizer Plow costs 2 wood, requires an Ock. Each time after you use a clay accumulation space, you can pay a clay to plow a field. If you do, you have to leave the clay on the space. This card's stupid. This card is stupid. I think this card should be banned. We'll see what the power actually says, but in the endgame, clay spaces are so easy to get. Like, yeah, banned here, correct. This card should be banned. Like, this card trivializes getting plows in terms of, like, you can't get blocked. People are not going to block you from taking 1 clay or 2 clay, and you can just basically take that space every round as your own private plow space, but you're also getting slight clay while doing it. Like, I know, the plow, and it's relatively cheap. It's really easy on the prereqs. Like, The other plows require you to fight for the plow space. You can get a bit wrecked, etc. Like, forest plow is like the best analog to this. And even forest plow, for as good as it is, requires you to leave 2 wood behind, which wood is a more contested space and a more contested resource. And now you have to pay 2 of it. Paying 2 wood instead of 1 clay is a huge difference. And you're incentivizing your players instantly to take that wood in the next round, which can make it a little tricky for forest plow to like actually get the plows in, or at least be generating resources while taking the plows. Pulverizer plow, it's pretty freaking easy to generate clay and get your fields at the same time, which is just dumb. It's real dumb. It should not exist. Plowing should not be this easy. Anyhow. Forest plow can get super blocked because everybody just takes all the wood spots. Yeah. Look, I'm with you that yeah. Also, forest plow is really freaking good, as is. So yeah, to make a card that's like substantially better than that is not a good idea. But zigzag harrow, you need 3 fields in an L shape. It costs 1 wood and it passes. You immediately plow another field such that it completes the zigzag pattern. So you need to make sure that you're plowing such that you can make that Z pattern with your fields. But that's not too hard for most farmyard arrangements. And then paying a wood for an instant field is pretty good. The fact that it passes is a little scary. However, the restrictions on it mean that if your opponent doesn't know about it and isn't prepared for it, they might not be able to play it, which is pretty handy. I'm putting this A tier. I think a wood for a field is a plenty good minor improvement. And the fact you get it instantly is really helpful and really nice. And the restriction is not that meaningful. Yeah, exactly. Most farmyard arrangements that have 5 fields can choose to plow it in a Z if they're thinking about it ahead of time. So, all right, recruitment. Recruitment. You have to play recruitment when you have nobody left in the house, so it has to be your last action of a round. It costs a food. However, provided you have room in your house, every time you get a minor improvement action, you can instead take family growth. So, recruitment allows for round 3 family growth, which is terrifying. But you can, not that infrequently, go 3 wood, start player recruitment, take 2 reed, take 2 wood, then round 3 you build a room, and then round 3 you start player, or major minor, and family growth. Because of that, it is banned. It is way too easy to abuse recruitment for stupidly early family growth, particularly stage 1 family growth. If it's a late growth game, recruitment can be super dumb because you might just spend rounds 4 and 5 building another room and growing again, and now you're at 4 family members in round 5 or something, and nobody else gets to grow until round 7. Yeah. Recruitment is banned. It's straight S tier. It's insane. This is the type of card where I wonder what Ue is on when he designs cards. And then he designed some good cards, so again, I shouldn't give him too much crap, but this one is insane. Royal Wood. Royal Wood costs a single food. It has no prereqs. At the end of each turn in which you use the farm expansion space or you build an improvement, you get 1 wood back for every 2 wood you paid. So, what this says is, let's suppose I build 2 wood rooms at once. I pay 10 wood and 4 reed, and I get 5 wood back because of Royal Wood. If I build my stables for 8 wood, I get 4 wood back. Royal Wood is better carpenter in your opinion? It's S tier, yeah. Or it's better carpenter's parlor. Yeah, I agree. This is a better carpenter's parlor also. Like, carpenter's parlor costs a wood and a stone. This costs a single food and does a very similar effect. I agree it's S tier. It might just be ban worthy. When I read Royal Wood, it seems ban-worthy to me.
We'll see what the stats say about it in the long run, but this card is just wildly good. You play this early, you build your wood rooms, you build some stables, you get wild discounts on those things. Those are things you'd already kind of like to be doing anyhow. You can find some pretty nuts combos with it. Yeah, it's good. All right, 6 miners left. Field Spade. Each time after you sow in at least one field, you get a stone. Field Spade is okay. It's not great. Wait, did we already rate Field Spade? I could have sworn I already rated Field Spade. Oh, because I did. Uh-oh. Are these images out of order? Huh. Or there's just 2 Field Spades in this image. That's probably what's up. All right, skip Field Spade. We already did it. Slurry. Slurry is totally free. In the breeding phase of each harvest, if you get newborn animals of at least 2 types, you also get a sow action. That's very good. Getting free sow actions is very good. And all you have to do is have 2 breeding animals. That's a position you often should be in at the end game. Having a totally free card that just gives you sow actions after the harvest, this directly replicates the pretty good occupation fodder planner. And fodder planner limits your sows based on how many animals you're breeding. Slurry gives you completely unconditional sow actions. Slurry will often give you 2 or 3 sows if you set up for it. Slurry goes straight to A tier. This is a free card that absolutely is worth drafting and building around. And the fact that it's totally free, can be played whenever you want, and almost always is going to do a decent bit for you. These sow actions almost certainly should be worth at least like 2 points, and often can be worth more like 3 or 4 points of crops. So that's why I'm so high on Slurry. All right, Carpenter's Yard. It costs a wood and a reed. It gives a point. You can build the joinery and well, even when taking a minor improvement action. Or you can build both with a single major improvement action. So, meme-wise, this card is hilarious because we always joke that well plus joinery is GG, but you don't actually usually want to build the well in the joinery, and you don't usually want to play a card that costs a wood and a reed just so you can build both of them slightly easier later. This is pretty bad. It does at least have a point on it, and building the well as a miner is not actually terrible. Like, there are scenarios I can imagine where you got 3 early reedstone foods, you built your room, and you SP Carpenter's Yard into grow with the well, but this is an exception to the card that all Carpenter's cards are busted. Yeah, this card is pretty bad. I don't think it's quite bad enough to land into F tier. I think the scenario I described is reasonable and will sometimes happen, but for the most part, it's bad. Silage. Silage requires 2 fields. In each returning home phase, in which there's no harvest, you can pay 1 grain, even from a field, to breed 1 animal. Silage is weird, but it's okay. Paying a grain to get like a pig or a cow is totally fine, but how many returning home phases are there where you have grain in the ground and you have 2 cows or 2 pigs, like 1 or 2, and then you're still not making that great of an exchange? At least it's free, but it's not going to come up very often, and you're not going to want to play or build your game around that effect. But it's just good enough to not land an F tier? Sure. Maddock. Maddock is actually kind of cool. You pay 1 wood early, and then each time you get reed or stone from an action space, you also get a clay. Now, you don't often need to invest in Maddock because you don't often have a great use for the clay. You don't always know how often you're taking reed or stone from action spaces. But some games, you absolutely know you plan to take a good amount of reed stone food and maybe some reed actions, maybe some stone, and you know Maddock is going to give you quite a lot of clay, Maybe you have game plan that's going to let you build some clay rooms or build pottery or something. In which case, Madoc is a reasonable start player early. Um, I'm going to put Madoc in B tier. Madoc is pretty usable in a decent number of games. It's not great, and it doesn't always want to get played. It's not always worth picking or drafting or playing. But most games can be happy to have Madoc as an option and start player with it early and do some stuff with the clay or just clay rooms with the clay. No, maybe that's a little high. Maybe it's C tier, but Madoc is solid at least. Vegetable slicer. Each time you upgrade a fireplace to a cooking hearth, you immediately get 2 wood and a veg. Not retroactively, so you have to have this. You have to upgrade a fireplace to a hearth after you have this in play, which should be pretty obvious. It costs a wood initially, but you get 2 wood and a veg back. If you can get this down and you know you're upgrading a fireplace to a cooking hearth, getting a free wood and a veg is solid, but it's not incredible, and it's not that often that you get to use it. It's slightly weird timing, and you can get hearth blocked. I'm gonna put it in C tier, but in games where like it actually works and stuff, it's more like a B card. But I just think it's a little niche and a little spooky in timing and getting blocked and stuff. Also, some number of games you just build to a hearth directly, so which is part of the problem on like building a fireplace. Somebody else usually builds the hearth. Now there's only one hearth left. Are you really gonna get it? I don't know. Especially once you play that, you spook other players into like, oh shit, there's a fight for the hearth. If anybody else wants the other hearth, they're gonna probably prioritize getting it. So, all right, last card. Last card is Craft Brewery. Craft Brewery costs 2 wood and a clay, which is pretty expensive, but the effect is wild. In the feeding phase of each harvest, you can use this card to turn 1 grain from your supply plus a grain from a field into 2 bonus points and 4 food. This is very powerful. This is a combination points and food engine. This is better than like Beer Table. Beer Table lets you convert a grain into 2 points each harvest. This lets you convert a grain into 2 points and a grain into 4 food each harvest. So it's sort of like having a baker and a beer table combined into one card. But it's even slightly better than that because one of the grains comes from a field, not from your supply. So you get to clear your fields faster, which means you get to resow faster. You get to harvest your grain faster. So Craft Brewery is a part scythe worker, part baker, part beer table in one card. If that sounds like too many effects and too many good things for one card, you'd be right. This card is busted and it is banned, and it should stay banned. It is wildly good. If for some reason you're playing with this, draft it, find any grain cards, and get your grain in the ground, and you get food and bonus points every harvest, which is incredible. This is wildly good. Yes, it's a little pricey, but its effects are insane. So absolutely worth the price, and clearly straight to S tier. At the end here, our S tier did get pretty big. There are quite a few cards that are already banned. There are quite a few things that absolutely should be banned. There's some stuff that might get banned. Although there's some stuff that is just very solid, but I don't expect to get banned. Our A tier looks pretty healthy. There's a lot of very nice, solid cards in there that I'd be happy to play in almost every game. B tier has a lot of solid stuff that has useful niches or can be powerful in the right circumstances or is just generically reasonably good. We got another nice, healthy C tier of a bunch of mediocre, kind of average cards that, sometimes do things or at least have a pretty low floor and are okay, or pretty high floor and are okay always or whatever. D tier, we got a lot of niche stuff that sometimes sees the light of day. And then we have F tier, which is mostly populated by cards you probably will never see me playing because they have almost no niches and basically don't need to exist. All right. You feel like we could just delete like 20 of these grain conversion cards and not miss them? Yeah, there's a few too many grain conversion cards in Revised. I wish there were a few more animal conversion cards for bonus points or some stuff, right? Yeah, it is a little wild how much Revised leaned into this grain for bonus point cards. There's so many of them, and it's a bit wild. But anyhow, this is the tier list. I'm sure I will have a link in the video description to this. I can provide a link to the Imager site too, so you can hopefully find the big versions of cards. But yeah, I'm glad to wrap this up. But yeah, this is crazy. This took almost 5 hours to go through all these cards and talk about them, which is not shocking. There's a lot of cards and a lot to say about a lot of stuff, and I feel like I could have plenty of arguments about plenty of these cards. But hopefully, some people find this useful and fun and enlightening. Also, again, don't totally take all of my card rankings as absolute gospel. Some of these I don't have that much experience with in 4-player settings, or I don't necessarily know the exact interactions we're facing. Like, this is a lot of cards. I feel pretty good about what I've said about most of this stuff, but as always, things will shift over time. This is just to give you kind of an idea about what loosely things are, and that hopefully will let you more rapidly build up your own opinions and have strong games with this card set by recognizing what are some of the trap cards, what are some of the weak cards that you shouldn't be building around, and what are some of the strong cards you should be building around that maybe you weren't planning to. As always, though, too, like, the path to getting better is to just try to force some cards. So, to be clear, like, I say Future Building Site is terrible and it's a trap and it's going to cause you issues. But by all means, draft it and try to prove me wrong. 3 bonus points is great, right? I'm rating some stuff that gives 3 points really highly, like Breed Registry. Breed Registry is a 3-point card that I have in the A tier, right? Where is it? Or Special Food? Wait, no. Breed Registry. Yeah, Breed Registry. Breed Registry is in A tier, and it gives 3 points. Future Building Site gives 3 points. Try to prove me wrong. Try to use cards. That's how you get better. But sorry if I mentioned it, but there's a link to this list where we can look through it closer. There will be. I guess I can give it. I don't. Let's find out. Shh. Do I? Let's see. Uh-oh, did I not save this to my account? Did I just do this without saving it? Oh no, oh no. Oh no, it didn't save it? Oh, that's so annoying. Well, there will be a link. Oh no, it exists. Wait a sec. What the heck? I hate TierMaker. I hate this website for what it's worth. I've said that before, but this site I'll figure out how to share the link. It'll go on the video page later. I don't immediately have it, but it'll at least go while uploaded to YouTube, and I'll probably post it to some Discords at some point, so that people can access it. But yeah, or if anybody actually understands how this website works, then yeah, tell me. But I kind of loathe TierMaker. I like the idea behind it, but it has none of the features I would like. But anyhow, that's just blabbing on. Admittedly, it's free to use, so like I can't be that mad at it. But and again, huge shout out to Hades. Hades is the one that actually set up this tier maker and set up these images. I hope to do the same thing for the occupations at some point. Although now that I realize that it's 5 hours of talking through occupations, I'm not sure when I'll get to it, but I would like to. But also, yeah, I don't think we have all the images set up for the tier maker for Ox yet, so that'll be a slight project that I can maybe work a little on. But most of this happened because Hades spent the time gathering all these images and making the tier maker. Without it, I absolutely would not have spent the time setting it up. So huge shout out to him for setting this up, because yeah, I am just using his labor in terms of the tier maker list and the card images that he so helpfully provided that actually made this stream possible. So big thanks there. But yeah, otherwise, thanks everyone for hanging out. Thanks for chatting. It's been good. I definitely should go back to resting my voice for a while. So I will see people around. I don't know when I'll next stream yet, but later, everybody. Bye.